everybody has to say here. But I would point out that there will be an opportunity for members of the public to speak at the end of the meeting. If you would call the roll.
For the record, the Nebraska Highway Commission is assembled at the NDOT auditorium at the 1500 Nebraska Park Green, Nebraska. The date is Friday, August 23rd, 2024. The time is 8:30 a.m. Copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the web. Commissioner Koppel.
Here.
Commissioner Cox.
Here.
Commissioner Kindig.
Here.
Commissioner Lee Green.
Here.
Commissioner McGinnis.
Here.
Commissioner Mello.
Here.
Commissioner Wolford.
Here. It appears that we do have a quorum. At this time, I would just like us all to bow our heads and take a moment to remember Jerome. We lost a member of our commission here recently. And again, if we could just remember him in a moment of silence. Thank you. The next order of business is to review and approve the minutes of the May 17th, 2024 meeting. I think everybody's had a chance to take a look at those. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as they've been submitted?
Move for approval of the May 17th minutes as presented.
Second. Been moved and seconded. If you would call the roll.
Commissioner Koppel.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Kindig.
Yes.
Commissioner Lee Green. Commissioner McGinnis.
Yes.
Commissioner Mello.
Yes.
Commissioner Wolford.
Yes.
Thank you. I guess the next order of business that's in front of the commission today, leading up to the District 1 presentation, I would turn the floor over at this time to Richard to say a few words to his constituents.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone that's here today. This is our district meeting. We will do a presentation on what's going on in District 1. District 1, many of you probably don't know for sure where it is, but it's basically south of the Platte River, all the way from the northwest corner would be David City, Rising City, all the way down to Falls City. And it goes all the way to the Kansas line. It's a pretty vast area with a lot of small towns. And so it's a lot of lane miles, and we'll let Brandon get into all the statistics. He doesn't trust me with numbers, but want to thank you, and thank you for coming south of the Platte.
Thank you, Richard. The next order of business to come before the commission is the director's remarks. So at this point, I'll turn the floor over to Vicki.
Not quite yet, Brandon.
Not quite yet, Brandon.
Thank you and welcome everyone. I want to welcome Senator Ballard. Appreciate you being here. Our FHWA partners, our City of Lincoln partners, Lancaster County, AGC, and our design consultant partners. It's great to see a full room. But also I want to recognize two new members to the NDOT team that weren't here. So typically in Lincoln, we do see a big presence from our NDOT team. So thank you for all being here. But specifically want to recognize Amy Starr as our new Deputy Director of Administration. So she assumed this role earlier this month, and so she'll be helping us out with a few key divisions. And then we have Lynn Heaton, who's our new Chief of Staff and will be overseeing our innovative finance program. So we'll get to them later as we work our way through the agenda, but very much appreciate all of our stakeholders being here to listen to an important meeting about the future of the NDOT. So as we work through the program, this is unique. You're going to see what we're doing really in the frame of reference of a specific district. So you'll be able to see some of the innovative things that one of our new district engineers has planned for us, as well as here in headquarters, what we're working towards and how our plan and how our program will be adjusted for the future. So again, thank you for being here and look forward to the District 1 presentation.
Thank you, Vicki. One thing I would like to mention too, and extend my thanks to NDOT. I recently had the opportunity to attend the WASHTO conference with many of the people that's in this room. And I see a fellow back there nodding his head. But anyway, I think kudos to Riley and Vicky for putting on a great show. We had great attendance. I had an opportunity to see a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long time, but they did a great job of putting that program together in Omaha.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just for everyone in the audience's reference, we had over close to 700 people in attendance across 20 states. So for NDOT to pull it off, it was not something small and something we've been planning for the last year and a half. So very much thank the group for pulling that together.
It was an excellent program. Okay, this time we'll go ahead and move forward with Brandon's presentation on the District 1 program.
Thank you. I'm Brandon Morley, District 1 engineer, and I'll be going through the highway program this morning. We'll start out with a few District 1 statistics, just so everybody's aware of the district that Commissioner McGinnis described. We'll go through our 2024 construction program, a few highlights from what we're currently building today. And then we'll look at some upcoming projects from the 25 to 30 programs. And then finally finish with the maintenance at the house. So District 1 is composed of 13 counties in southeast Nebraska. We've got almost 1,600 lane miles of roadways that we're responsible for, and that equates to about 1,600 centerline miles, or about 3,700 lane miles. And that includes, of course, Interstate 80 and I-180 here in Lincoln. We've got a significant number of bridges, 725 in total in the district, and we maintain and build those projects with our 15 maintenance and construction yards spread out throughout the district. 3 of those yards are a combined construction and maintenance yard. That would be Superior Street in Lincoln, as well as Fairbury and Tecumseh. And then the remaining 12 yards that you see on the district map there spread out are exclusively for our maintenance forces. We've got 229 employees, and as far as population, we've got 486,000 people that reside here in District 1. We're about a quarter of Nebraska's population. So moving into our 2024 construction program, there's about 16 projects worth about $190 million. You can see on the map, they're pretty well dispersed across the district. I'm going to highlight just a few of these. And although everything we do, every project that we build has a safety component, I'm going to point out a few safety-specific projects whose sole purpose is to improve the safety for the traveling public, as well as some of the larger capital improvement projects that we've got going on. So the 3 projects I'm going to highlight that we are currently building are a couple of urban reconstruction projects in Milford and Seward, and then our 6-lane expansion of the interstate west of Lincoln. And it's important to note that of that $190 million, $115 million of that is that interstate expansion. So that is by far a huge part of the construction program. The first project I'm going to highlight is in Milford. This is a almost $5 million urban reconstruction of Highway 6 through town. It's only about a mile of length, but as you can imagine, there's a significant amount of pavement, drainage work, and utilities. As far as the drainage improvements, we're essentially doubling the number of storm requests to help with flooding in that town. And then on the little safety note, we are rebuilding the sidewalks that are being tore up due to the utility work, and we're adding new crosswalks that were not there before. So in Milford, the elementary and high school are on the north side of Highway 6. There's a South FCC college on the south side, so we've got a significant number of students crossing Highway 6. So on the west side of town to serve the elementary and high school, we'll have 2 new push-button crosswalks. And then there's an existing crosswalk at the college that where we have to make that a little bit more obvious for commuters coming into town. We're well underway, and the estimated completion date for this project is November of this year. Next is Seward. It's another urban reconstruction, a little bit larger at $10 million. It's about 1.5 miles, and again, we've got significant pavement, utility, and drive work there. One of the unique things of this project is anybody that's spent time in Seward knows they have a huge 4th of July celebration every year where they have thousands of people that come in. So we made sure that we halted construction before and after to let those people come in and enjoy their 4th and again. And during that closure on July 3rd, the contractor and the DOT and material suppliers got together and hosted a community event where we had over 160 kids come in. They climbed through the construction equipment, our snow plows. They put their hands in the concrete buffer next to the sidewalk in front of the library, and it just turned out to be a great event to kind of invite the kids in and let them see what we're actually building out there. Got an estimated completion of March for this project. However, the pavement is slated to be finished by this fall or winter, and then we'll just have some odds and ends that clean up in the spring. That brings us to our interstate expansion, Pleasantville and Northwest 56th Street. This is a $115 million reconstruction and expansion of about 7.5 miles west of Lincoln. And as if you drive through there, you'll see that we're widening to the center. We're replacing that depressed grassy median with the concrete additional lanes, shoulders, and concrete median barrier. One of the things to note on this project is we are maintaining 2 lanes of traffic in each direction throughout the duration of the project. We are only allowing detours of 8 single-night, single directions throughout the 3-year project. And the reason for that is there's 8 structures to rebuild. 4 of those are overheads on the interstate. So, for example, the contractor can shut down eastbound traffic for one night to demolish half of 2 bridges. Then the next night, he can shut down westbound for one night to demolish the other half of those 2 bridges. And then you've got 2 nights to put the girders in place when it's time for that, and then he repeats that process on the remaining 2 overheads. So those are the only closures that we're allowing for that interstate expansion project. As far as safety benefits, that largely comes in the form of incident management. Right now, we've got 2 lanes in each direction. Anytime there's an accident, or say we have maintenance work to repair a bridge or pavement, and we have to shut down one of those lanes, we'll back up traffic for miles, and that can lead to additional accidents. So the 6th lane really gives us a huge benefit by relieving that congestion, relieving those backups, and planning for those events. It also puts in place that concrete median barrier, which will completely eliminate any crossover accidents, which can be pretty catastrophic. And one other thing that we just recently implemented in the construction zone are these radar speed signs. And so the contractor and our own staff had made mention of the fact that some of the public is not obeying the lowered speed limit. So this is our effort to try to enforce that. So you see the speed limit, you see your exact speed as you're crossing by, just to try to convince people to slow down in that construction zone. And this one is, we've got a completion date of January 27. I'd be surprised if it takes us that long to complete the project. Contractors is making good progress. So that's our 24 program that we're building right now. Take a look at that from 25 to 30. We've got $305 million for just construction plan in 25. Next 5 years after that. The first one I want to highlight is Lincoln West Beltway. This is a $52 million upgrade of Highway 77 to freeway standards on the west side of Lincoln. If you start at the top of that diagram and work your way to the south, we're going to build an interchange at Pioneers Boulevard. We're then going to close Old Cheney. We're going to build a second interchange at Warlick Boulevard or West Denton Road, and then finally close the Yankeeville axis. And those closures of Old Cheney and Yankeeville, those will be at the very end of the project after both interchanges are completely open and functioning. Safety benefits to this one is replacing multiple grade signals with grade separated interchanges for a large chunk of traffic that goes through here. That 11,080 TUC is one direction. It's actually 22,000 when you consider both directions on that stretch. This project is being designed as one project. However, the construction will be broken into 2 different projects. We'll begin the Warlick interchange sometime in 25, and then in about 1.5 years, 2 years later, we'll start the second project. Elmira and East and West is one of those solely safety-oriented projects that I mentioned. It's a $3 million upgrade of all the intersections in Elmira. So if you look at the aerial photograph, we're going to build 2 restricted crossing U-turns or RPETs. The first one is going to be an extended RPET that encompasses Highway 43 right here, as well as I Street in the middle of the aerial. And then we'll build a second RPET at the intersection of Highway 2 with a spur for S66A. In addition to those 2 RPETs, we're also building offset right turn lanes. So we'll be able to build one in the westbound Highway 2 at Highway 43 on the left, and then an additional one for the spur. And then one thing to note is there's already an offset right turn lane at I Street. So at the end of this project, we'll have RPETs for all the intersections as well as offset right-hand turn lanes, which will significantly improve the safety through that section that's had some accidents in the past. We've done some preliminary community involvement. I met with the city council, the school board, fire and rescue, and all voiced their support for this project. As we get a little bit further along in the design, we'll go out to the larger community this fall or early winter. And we'll be able to provide them more details of exactly what we're planning to get there. But next, we've got our Seward to Pleasantville Interstate 80 expansion. This is a $138 million expansion of about 9.5 miles, and this will pick up where the current project moves off and extend that 6-lane further to the west. This one is pretty structures heavy. We're replacing 14 structures in total, with 5 of those being overheads. And we're also rebuilding the Seward and Milford interchanges with the project. So again, the safety aspects are the additional capacity and that median barrier to eliminate crossover crash. Next, we've got Wahoo to Fremont. We're very preliminary in the time. We estimate about $118 to $126 million. We're looking at an expansion of Highway 77. And that's part of our expressway program. It's about 16.5 miles, and we're utilizing a 2+2 concept to build that. So the 2+2 concept, we are rehabbing and resurfacing the 2 existing lanes and then building 2 additional lanes. So we're taking advantage of the previous investment in the existing 2 lanes and then building 2 more to accommodate that. This one will see significant safety improvements at all the intersections that you see highlighted there. We're looking at the best means to control those. You'll probably end up seeing a couple roundabouts and perhaps another RPET once we get into design there. This project is also being designed as one project. The construction will be broken up into 3 different projects, and we hope to break ground on the first one in 2027. And final project I want to go through is another safety project, which is 27th Street to the Flat River. It's an $11.5 million cable median guardrail project for about 23.5 miles. And of course, the sole purpose of this is to eliminate the crossover crashes. This is a proven system. Here in District 1, we built our first one last year from Utica to Pleasantville on Interstate 80. And that was a similar 22 miles of cable guardrail. And in the past 13 months, that cable guardrail has been struck 63 times. On average, at any time that guardrail is struck, it costs us about $6,000 to repair. But as you can imagine, we found it to be well worth the money. We've had 0 crossovers since the installation of that. And that cable has got everything from small passenger cars and pickups to large semi-tractor trailers. In fact, one of the semi-trucks that contacted guardrail made a comment to our maintenance staff that had that guardrail not been there, there would have been nothing to stop her from going into the opposing lanes. So it does work extremely well. So that's kind of highlights of our construction that's coming up. I'm going to spend just a few seconds on the maintenance highlights. Of course, our maintenance workers are the guys out there that are doing the crack seals and the chip seals and pavement repair. They also repair our culverts when necessary. So this is an innovative culvert repair that we've been doing. It's ultraviolet replace pipe. The line of 4 feet of metal pipe. So just like the number of bridges that we've got thousands and thousands of culverts out there. A lot of these metal pipes are from the 20s, 30s, 40s. And over time, the bottoms will corrode, especially with our well in southeast Nebraska. So this is an alternative to digging those pipes up and replacing them. They're digging the pavement removal, minimal traffic type construction. They can do their work from the shoulder. And on average, they can complete one pipe in about 4 hours. The process is pretty interesting. They'll start with flushing the culvert if necessary. They'll insert a protective canvas on the bottom just to protect it from any sharp edges where the pipe is rusted through. Then they'll pull the liner through that pipe, and then they'll seal the ends and then inflate the liner, which takes the shape of the original culvert. Then they'll pull a UV light part through, which cures and hardens that liner. And so at the end of the project, you end up with about 1/4 to 3/8 inch hardened fiberglass liner with an estimated life of 75 years. They then remove their equipment and their flagging, and they move on down the road. So we can do quite a few of these in a short amount of time with minimal traffic disruption. In the last 2 years, we've done 41 culverts here in District 1. We're finalizing our list for this year, so we'll do a few dozen more. And we just recently got a on-call contract online, so that'll just streamline the process for District 1 as well as other districts that want to with technology. So it's been very beneficial. I see a lot of this in the future, just due to the speed and the minimal impact of traffic. That's the construction and maintenance side. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to take those.
Brandon, I had one question. You mentioned there at the beginning of your presentation about the number of employees you have, 229. Are you fully staffed?
I'm not. We've gained some traction. Last August, a year ago, we were down 30 positions. The last couple of months, I've been hovering around 14 to 15, and that's a combination of both construction and maintenance. So 229 positions, but I'm down about 15 right now.
I'm curious because I think every district is kind of struggling with that.
Yep, the districts, the industry in general, everybody's a little short on manpower. So we're, like I said, we made some improvements, but we've got a little ways to go.
There's no further questions. Thank you, Brandon. Sounds like you got your hands full for this upcoming year. The next item that we have on our agenda before the commission this morning is a report by Vicky regarding bonding.
I think we're gonna do public input on District 1.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I guess at this time, we're gonna go ahead, if there's any public input on out of District 1, this would be your time to come forward. If you do have something, we ask that you come to the podium, state your name, and spell it for the record. So again, if there's comments, sir.
My name is Gerald Johnson, GERALDKOHNSON. I'm the mayor of Wahoo, my third term. Served a couple of years with Senator Mello, and good relationship there, so I hope you work for us too. Thank you. A little bit of report following up on the Wahoo projects. It's been a good blessing to finally get the 4-lane at least to the east edge of Wahoo, which I think provides the next step to move further on that. Right now, we're about halfway through the process of a roundabout. It's going slow. Weather has not been friendly to us. We're probably 30 days more behind. They said that if it's a late snow, they might get done. So we hope so. But it does create an issue during the fall because of all the football traffic that travels out of Omaha. Usually comes down 77 or coming down 109. And 2/3 of that section is going to be detours. And so it's going to be a little bit of an issue for traffic going through there. Probably some second or third game they might figure it out. But there's still a lot of people that come down 77. So that's one of the areas that is current for us. Another area that we continue to battle with is the coming up north, the south edge of Wahoo, which is the corner of the hospital and Dillon's. Comes over the hill, but people see that. We can't keep patrol out there. State patrol has been there a lot. City police have been out there a lot to try and we can stop it when we're out there, but we can't be out there all the time. We'd like to possibly see, like what Sorosco has, a flashing light and bring better attention to the change. And of course, right now, they slow down there to 60, get around the curve, and they've got to slow down to 35. But we do get them slowed down eventually. But as soon as they came out of that going west out of the detour, the roundabout, by the time you get to first intersection, they're past 60. So it's just been a constant battle. I'm not sure if somebody would be willing to host a meeting up there and talk a little bit more about that, if that would be possible. It's great that you're fixing up 109 going to Fremont. It's patched up real well now. I guess you're going to overlay it, which I don't know when that's going to happen, but if that's overlaid during football season, it's probably worse. So I don't know what your schedule is. But now that we're past Wahoo, the intersection there at 109, moving east with the 4-lane, the timetable out there. Going back, I lived in Wahoo 20 years, and one of the first things I heard was that 4 lanes coming through. Well, it's through. I'm now every meeting I go to, and want to know about Wahoo east to Flat River, going into Omaha. There's a lot of people. We've got 2 industries that have a lot of people that have moved out. The industries have moved out to Wahoo, and half of their employees are still coming out that way. And so, 4-lane to at least to the bridge would be very helpful. I know possibly for that bridge, but that needs to be in our case, a high priority. So that's kind of brings us up to date on that. The roundabout in the process, I told some people there's a little bit of pain, but if there's no pain, there's no gain. And I think people are looking forward to it to be completed now. So I do appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Good morning, Chairman Hawks and members of the Nebraska State Highway Commission. It's an honor to be here before you this morning. My name is Rick Best, R-I-C-K-B-S-T, and I'm here in my capacity as the Vice Chair of the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners, and here to ask you to include East Beltway in the District 1 program. I'm going to read my remarks so I can get straight on it. Let me start by emphasizing that the impact of the East Beltway extends beyond Lincoln and Lancaster County. As the Highway Commission well knows, transportation is vital to keeping the entire state and its businesses economically competitive. Physical transportation infrastructure is an integral component of the supply chain support local, regional, and statewide growth, wider global economy. Now that the South Beltway has been completed in record time, we already see new residential and commercial development being planned and the unlocking of new economic opportunities. We've also seen a transformation in how safely and efficiently personal and commercial traffic can navigate through I sincerely thank the Department of Transportation and this commission for your restoring success on the South Beltway project. With the completion of the South Beltway, the East Beltway remains the final uncompleted portion of the expressway system around the city of Lincoln. In the absence of the eastern segment of the expressway system, 148th Street has become, in reality, the East Beltway. This is a county road, and more on that later, sure. The cities of Lincoln and Waverly are experiencing exponential growth, planning for even more expansion in the years ahead. I would add the people's involved. This is a lot of their traffic. With this exceptional growth comes continually escalating volumes of traffic on 148th Street, which will become increasingly unsafe as this traffic counts exceeds its designed capacity. Supporting our community's dramatic growth in the each requiring proportional investments in infrastructure, including a generational investment in East Beltway. This is the last piece of the puzzle to fully realizing the benefits of safe and easy regional interconnectivity around and throughout the capital city of Lancaster County. Like the South Beltway, the East Beltway requires state of Nebraska leadership and infusion of federal, state, and local funding, along with the backing of the business community. In support of this project, Lancaster County and the city of Lincoln have invested millions of dollars in securing the East Beltway corridor for future development. Partnership with the state of Nebraska on the East Beltway will allow this project to move to the forefront of discussions surrounding the currently expansive pool of federal funding. I implore you not to lose sight of the fact that today's momentum behind infrastructure development at the federal level presents the most favorable opportunity to complete this project, most favorable opportunity that most of us are going to experience in our lifetimes. This simply is an opportunity that cannot be missed. On behalf of the Lancaster County Board and Commissioners, citizens of Lancaster County, I'm proud to appear before you to ask the State Highway Commission to bring its leadership to bear on this beltway. This will affect a generational change in the way advancement has work. Thank you for considering having this beltway District 1. And thank you for your service. What a tremendous amount of responsibility you all take on. And Richard did tell me I should have worn a tie, so I fully get with that. I would be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rick.
Good morning, Highway Commissioners. I'd like to start by thanking Brandon because when Commissioner Best here this morning, it's always really helpful if he hears the same sort of maintenance concerns from the other engineers. When I have my 1 and 6, I'm going to refer to Brandon 6. My name is Pam Dingman. And we are you turn on the microphone. I don't know that it's on.
It's a push, not a, it's a pull, not a push. Sorry about that. Good morning. My name is Pam Dingman, P-A-M-D-I-N-G-M-A-N. I am the Lancaster County Engineer. I would like to take a few minutes this morning to talk to you about the East Beltway. As much as I would like to call the East Beltway my dream, it is really the dream of a generation of community leaders that came before me. The first agreement to define the corridor of the South and East Beltway was signed by NDOT, Lancaster County, and the city of Lincoln on October 12th of 1995, before I even had an engineering license. In fact, not really out of the time range when Lisa Richards and I were interns here at NDOT. Over the next several years, this partnership spent approximately $1.2 million to complete the corridor study and environmental study. The final study was approved by the Federal Highway Administration in 2002. This study identifies that in 1996, the payoff period or cost-benefit analysis for the East Beltway was just 13 years. In 2006, corridor protection was approved for the alignment and was put in place. In 2007, the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County signed an interlocal agreement to share the cost of purchasing land needed for the Beltway. Several tracts of land, mostly on the north end, have been purchased at this time. In 2016, the Build Nebraska Act and the Transportation Innovation Act showed the East Beltway project planning in their plan. Last year, the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County had the footprint updated to reflect current design standards for the East Beltway. This footprint is shown on the 11x17 map that I've passed out to you this morning. In addition, our agencies have updated the cost estimate of the project, and as you can only imagine, it's increased since the 90s to an amount of $550 million, and I expect that that number will continue to increase. We have the opportunity at this time to apply for grants that could help get this project across the finish line. These grants require a fair amount of work to be completed prior to submittal. However, in this case, the East Beltway has had a fair amount of work already done. Currently, 148th Street, which Commissioner Vest alluded to, located east of the East Beltway corridor from Highway 2 to Amberley Road, acts as the East Beltway for Lancaster County. When I took office in 2013, my predecessor had noted that 148th Street needed to be studied because he felt that the road contained more regional traffic than local traffic. In 2018, my department conducted a traffic study of 148th Street. That study indicates that without the East Beltway, 148th Street needs to be upgraded to a 4-lane road with intersection improvements by 2040. The 2018 cost for this was estimated at approximately $40 million. In addition to the study identified 50 crashes from 2013 to 2018 that were severe in nature. In 2022, the average daily traffic for these sections on 148th Street has reached nearly 6,300 vehicles a day, which is actually just 10% less than Saltillo Road before the construction of the South Beltway. And so I'm kind of sad as an engineer to see that we're creating the same issue again. The East Beltway is a dream of mine. Along with my city peers in Lincoln, we are dedicated to seeing this project to fruition. Please make the East Beltway a reality for the next generation. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pam.
Good morning. My name's Rick Kruger, R-I-C-K-K-R-U-E-G-E-R. I'm a Lincoln native, and our company does land development in Lincoln and Lancaster County. And I wanted to speak just for a couple seconds on the Beltway. I have a couple points. I'd like to see it brought forward sooner rather than later, because we can already see in Lincoln what's happened because of the South Beltway. The East Beltway, in my opinion, would be much more impactful because Lincoln's natural rate of growth is more to the east than the south. Even though it's good in the south, it's more to the east. It'll have a tremendous economic benefit to the citizens of Lincoln. I know that the county and the city are reserving right-of-way in there, and 148th is, I think, overused by quite a bit. It appears to me. This will also help, once it's done, take that truck traffic off of 84th Street. And 84th Street has not been 4-lane for all that long. It was only 4-lane finished when Colleen Sang was the mayor. And I sit on a city committee overseeing the quarter-cent sales tax for street improvements. And we were talking about this yesterday, how the intersections on 84th just are getting, the truck traffic is really deteriorating them. It will help with that. Also, I would note, if you can visualize Lincoln in your mind, where the South Beltway intersects Highway 2, that's where the East Beltway would come down, generally at 120th Street. And that, in my view, will become a large industrial center, which will help the whole county in terms of economic development. It also helps integrate Bennett. Now, Lincoln in the last decade or two, especially after impact fees in 2003, we've seen a lot of growth south in Hickman, north in Waverly. Eagle's been mentioned. Bennett is also seeing single-family home sites start. This will help integrate them in the greater Lincoln community as a bedroom community, but still, there's a lot of good land out there that can be used. We have a housing shortage in Lincoln, and this helps open that up, in my opinion. Those are the main points I wanted to touch on, and I appreciate the time you've given me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this morning. My name is Bo Ballard. I represent the 21st District in the Nebraska Legislature. And I'll be brief because I'm very excited to hear the update on bonding here in a couple minutes. So I just want to reiterate what the commissioner said, what Pam Dingman said, and what the business community said, that this is a project that needs to happen, that it is something that we can't wait another 30 or 40 years to complete. I first became interested in the East Beltway right when I started in the legislature 2 years ago. For me, I thought it was about economic development, about quality of life, and those things are true. But it became a reality when I was knocking doors in District 21 in Waverly, when a parent said, "Hey, I have a kid traveling from all the way down in Eagle to the high school in Waverly, because it's one of the biggest school districts in the state by land mass." And he said, my 16-year-old kids traveling with combines during harvest season. I have a safety concern. And so what can we do to keep this East Beltway moving? And so that's when I became very interested in this project, continue to work on finding funding from the state level to help bring this to fruition. And so looking forward to partner with the commission, the business community, and Lancaster County to make this project a reality. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I do appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Senator.
Hello. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak concerning our organization's interest in expediting the East Beltway. My name is Carter Thiele. That's CarterThiele. I am the Policy and Research Coordinator for the Lincoln Independent Business Association. And I joined LIBA a year ago. And when I did, I was very quickly caught off guard why an organization devoted to representing business owners' interests would be so concerned about the construction of this road outside of town. But apparently this has been a conversation in the business community since back in the 1970s, and I understand the reason for that now. When you have a bypass that connects one of Nebraska's two large cities to the next, you're talking about creating significant economic development and residential growth. It's been mentioned time and time again during the past several legislative sessions that those things are crucial for alleviating a portion of the state's high tax burden on residents by creating a greater tax base from which to collect. Now, we understand that this isn't a 5 to 10 year process. We recognize that the East Beltway is a long-term investment, but it has felt that there has been some reluctance from the state to begin making it. While we understand that the Department of Transportation has a lot of responsibility amongst the state highway system, the state of Nebraska has a significant need to grow its economic and residential capacity. And I think that it's very hard to argue that any infrastructure project within the state would better further either of those initiatives than the construction of the East Beltway. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carter.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Katie Bohlmeyer, spelled Katiebohlmeyer. I'm the Business Policy Advocate at the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. I first want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to the District 1 commenters. And I want to thank some of our community stakeholders that were able to make it out here today. Commissioner Vest, you've been a great advocate on the county board. Pam Deanman, you have been the starship that leads us all in creating the momentum to get the community behind this progress. Senator Ballard, you've done the most legwork in the legislature trying to advocate for this project, and the Lincoln Chamber is very grateful for that effort. Commissioner McGinnis, you are a great asset, and we're very excited for you to be on this commission and to lead District 1 in some great investments for our community. Director Kramer, we really want to especially thank you for taking so much time to meet with us over the last couple months and discussing this project and the importance of the issues that you need to get done. And we're very thankful for your service on this board and our community. The state of Nebraska is very grateful to have you. Just getting right into it, completing the East Beltway is crucial for enhancing Lincoln's economic growth and improving traffic flow, which will attract new businesses and support the city's long-term development. This vital infrastructure project will also ensure safer and more efficient transportation for residents, visitors, those who commute to and around Lincoln for work, and the farm-to-market regional aspect, which will strengthen Lincoln's position as a regional hub. And I just want to take a subsection off of that and make a personal anecdote. I'm from a farm community in Gage County, and the number one thing that I hear when I go home and visit my parents and my friends is we need an East Beltway. There is a large traffic flow that comes from my community that will go up to Lincoln and even further into Commissioner Mello's community. So we're really excited to see the development of this conversation. Like Carter pointed out, we know this is not something that's going to get done in the next 5 to 10 years, but we're very excited to keep that momentum going, finding some funding, and hopefully make this a great project for our community to benefit from. Again, want to thank everybody for your service and your time and your commitment to our community. It's greatly valued. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Anyone else?
If I could, Commissioner, maybe I could address a few of the comments that were made and some of the questions. Mayor Johnson, I'm from UTAN, and so I very much understand the concerns with Highway 92. I've told the story a few times that the only crash I have on my record is on 92 hydroplaning. And so very much understand the concerns there and field questions on 92 just as much as I field them on the Lincoln East Beltway. So appreciate you bringing the concerns forward. For the Lincoln East Beltway, I think it's important to understand the context in which we're talking about another large-scale project. So for those in the room and those online in the commission, you'll remember that we don't get done paying for the Lincoln South Beltway till 2030. So we are still financing the construction of the Lincoln South Beltway. As Brandon said, we've got the West Beltway in our sights and are starting this significant planning towards those two construction projects to complete the West Beltway. That doesn't mean that we aren't leaning into the Lincoln East Beltway. But there are some realities that we have to face with taking on a large-scale project like this. And one of them is the financial feasibility of a $550 million project, which would be the state's largest project that we've ever built. If you remember, last year was the first year that we've had to update our needs for the new economic climate in which we're in. And you saw our needs, which we calculate over a 20-year period, jump 15%. Now, we've done the math. So if you look at our 20-year needs in today's dollars, 2025 dollars, you're looking at over $16 billion of projects that we have said are validated need. That means that we've done the work, we've looked at the project, they're being programmed. We have to build those projects to meet the needs of Nebraska now. Now, when you look at that into 2045, where we start to see the Lincoln East Beltway start to trend, those dollars jump significantly. So as a DOT, we have to look at need versus resources. And this is the most challenging piece for this project because right now, those resources on an annual basis are short about $90 million, up to 120 if you just look at making sure that we can use our full federal appropriation. And so we have a significant issue just with cash flow to be able to get the projects done that have been promised. And I want to, as we transition to the next topic, I want to be very clear that funding is not financing and financing is not funding. In order to move into a financing state, we have to make sure we have the resources to be conservative with our funding. And what I mean by that is there has to be a benefit, there has to be a reason that we would bond, but there has to be the money there to make sure that we can make those debt service payments. Now, we are very conscious of this as we move into the bonding process and the innovative finance process because we still carry that debt from the Lincoln South Beltway through 2030. And you'll remember that the bonds that have been authorized from the legislature have to be issued by 2029. So there is a tight time frame that we have to look and say, what can we afford and how does it impact the rest of our program and all of our needs across the state? And so with that, we've been clear with the Lincoln community that we don't discredit anything that's been said, but there is going to have to be a very sophisticated approach to how we would fund a project of this significance. And with that, we would have to look at the feasibility of innovative finance beyond what is currently in our toolbox. And so you'll hear today a step towards that, but definitely not a solution to expediting the Lincoln East Beltway. There are things within our business practices that we can pull down that will allow us to be more efficient, and we're already working on that. And two that I've shared publicly are, we know that we have not fully achieved the full benefit of NEPA assignment. To have decisional authority and to say that this project could be potentially a CE3 is huge in over the overall timeline of delivery of the project. We have stabilized our environmental team and we are moving forward so that in a year or so, we can make the decision of if it's the right thing for Nebraska to go after 327. That is a big internal lift for us, but one that we want to make sure that we can examine and be able to understand what the benefit is to the department, specifically to our large scale projects. Beyond that, it's also looking at what is the financial feasibility of a project like this? What are our options? You're talking about a greenfield project. You're talking about something that could have tolling feasibility to it. It is a $550 million estimate right now, meaning it's going to be $100 million above that by the time we get to build it. That is the reality of the situation and the inflation rates that we see. So as we start to look at it, we have to have a funding plan going into having conversations so that the city, the county understand what they're undertaking, what their portion is going to be. And the feds, as we move into a grant type environment, have a good estimate of what that project cost will be as well. Because once we go to that grant, we're beholden to that amount, meaning we're not going to go get more from them. And so we've got to be smart there as well. And so we have moved forward with a few grants on the federal side on the planning to be able to look at the financial feasibility, but not just for the Lincoln East Beltway, for some of these other projects that we have that would really expedite our movement into a finance state in a responsible way. And so there is a lot of work behind the scenes that is moving and working in order to ensure that as the opportunity starts to move, we are not behind. And so I want to make sure everybody feels confident that we want these conversations because they keep showing us that there is support for the project. And we have to have that support to make sure that our lawmakers understand where we put the resources that they give us, that those go into the resources that we're granted, go into real change within communities that drive economic development. And we've seen a lot of conversations around growing the economy, but if we don't have funding for transportation included in how we grow our economy, then you're looking at unfunded mandates on the transportation system. And I don't have a bucket of cash we can just start pushing out to those. So that means that projects are moving and being pushed back to fund those that are coming up. And so as we look at how we're growing as a state, we have to consider transportation. Is that Commissioner?
I'm going to tell a story here that Pam mentioned 148th Street. When I first got out of school, I worked for Don Thomas. And my first project was the paving on Havelock Avenue from 84th to 148th. So kind of familiar with that area a little bit, Pam. Okay, if there's no other comments?
As long as we're telling little stories. Back in the 60s, my father sat on a committee to designate the East Beltway. And he told me that they were leaning to 56th Street, but they decided to push it out to 70th Street, and it died because they thought we would never grow that far. So that goes back a long ways. But they've been looking at this East Beltway since the 60s, I know.
Anything else on the District 1 program or the presentations? Seeing none, I would then turn the floor back over to Vicki to visit with us a little bit about bonding.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. So today you're going to hear a presentation from Jeff Schroeder, our legal counsel, and Lynn Heaton, who is overseeing our innovative finance department, and some of our working group members that lays out the foundation of how Nebraska is moving into a finance state. So I think it's important to understand that we're not making any decisions today. There's no votes today. We're taking this all in as the really first opportunity for education for the commission, as well as for our constituents, so that everyone understands what this commitment looks like, but also what the process looks like. And so as we move into talks of issuances that would be later on this year into early next year, we really have the opportunity to answer any questions. We've been very deliberate with our approach as the legislature changed the bonding authority from 50 million this last session into 450 million, the previous session, 450 million, to make sure, as I said earlier, that our program is safeguarded. For those of you who watch our construction program, you know that our annual program hovers and has hovered in the last few years around 730 to 750 million. And so as we talk about some of these large scale projects, it eats a chunk of our overall program. And so I think it's hard to continue to be a pay-as-you-go state if you want to see these projects move forward. But I also would say that in the past, the narrative has been you can't be conservative if you finance, which is absolutely incorrect in my opinion. You can 100% be conservative, and in many ways it actually is a financing tool to save the taxpayer funds. And so for us, we look at what we value. And the governor he values time, he values the taxpayer dollar. And so we look at a matrix to understand what the time is at the cost of the project. Each project, that matrix is not going to be the same because we may have been on that footprint for 12 years. And we want to finish our commitment to that corridor and finish that project before we move on to some of the other projects. And so you may see our commitment and our desire to use our financing tools shift project by project or corridor by corridor, depending on what's important to that group. And we'll be very transparent as we move through it. But when we start the conversation, we're starting the conversation from a point of what is authorized. And so it's good to remember the authorization is 450 million bonds issuance prior to 2029. What that means is you'll be paying through the 2040s. And so for us, these are commitments that our children are going to have to keep. And so we have been very deliberate, and I want to invite our team up to kind of give us a bit of an idea of what this first step looks like. Lynn?
Thank you, Vicki, and thank you, commission members. It is a pleasure to be here. Senator, how are you doing? It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I have to say I've really enjoyed rejoining the Department of Transportation. It does feel like a family, and so I'm excited to be here. Today, we want to provide you with a high-level introduction to highway project financing. Nebraska's Constitution and statute authorizes debt financing of highway projects. Jeff Schroeder will join me in a moment and will share more information about the constitutional authority and about the Nebraska Highway Bond Act. We'll introduce the benefits of project financing, the participants in a financing, the documents that will be reviewed by the commission beginning at your October meeting, and the anticipated timeline of events. So NDOT's approach will NDOT will take a conservative, responsible approach. Financing provides a new option to expedite critical highway projects in a fiscally responsible manner. It presents an opportunity to deliver projects faster, positively impacting the state and communities sooner. Issuance would be selective based on favorable conditions, such as leveraging lower interest rates relative to construction inflation rates, and targeting projects ready for construction, but that lack funding. NDOT would balance use of financing with a pay-as-you-go approach on other projects, ensuring we keep within the legislature's responsible limits on bond issuance and debt service. And finally, financing also shares costs of near-term capital improvements with highway users 15 plus years into the future. Financing of construction projects may be new to NDOT, but is used as a funding mechanism to expedite projects by most other state DOTs across the country. This slide provided by our municipal advisor, Piper Sandler, shows in blue the states that have financed construction with what's known as transportation revenue bonds, or also known as highway revenue bonds. However, almost all of the other states not shown here in blue, with the exception of Nebraska, have financed highway construction with other forms of financing, such as through general obligation bonds or through TIFIA loans via the US DOT's Build America Bureau. And now Jeff will come on up and share some information on the legal authority.
I am Jeff Schroeder, and I am the Chief Counsel of the Nebraska Department of Transportation. I also serve as the Bureau Chief for the Transportation Bureau of the Nebraska Attorney General's Office. So Article 13, Section 1 of Nebraska's Constitution expressly allows the legislature to authorize the issuance of bonds for construction of highway in Nebraska. For the payment of the bonds, the Constitution irrevocably pledges state revenue closely related to the use of such highways, such as motor vehicle fuel taxes or motor vehicle license fees. As you know, last year, the legislature amended the Nebraska Highway Bond Act to authorize an issuance of bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $450 million. The legislature further provided the proceeds of such issues shall be used exclusively for the purpose of the Build Nebraska Act, the legislature expressly finding that the need for such construction and reconstruction work and the vital importance of the highway system to the welfare and safety of all Nebraskans requires such action. In another section of the act, the legislature stated the issuance of the bonds is for the purpose of accelerating completion of the highway construction projects identified for funding under the Build Nebraska Act. The Build Nebraska Act specifies the following about the use of the proceeds of an issuance of bonds. At least 75% of such bonds shall be used for construction of expressway system and federally designated high priority corridors. The remaining proceeds may be used for surface transportation projects of the highest priority as determined by the department. So the role of the Highway Commission. The legislature has specified an important role for the State Highway Commission concerning the decision to issue highway bonds. The legislature directed that upon the written recommendation of the Department of Transportation, the Commission, acting for and on behalf of the state, may issue from time to time bonds under the Nebraska Highway Bond Act by resolution in such principal amounts as determined by the Commission. The Highway Commission is granted all powers necessary or convenient to carry out the purposes and exercise the powers granted by such act. Further, the Nebraska Highway Bond Act authorizes the hiring of experts needed to issue bonds and authorizes the commission to determine the terms of the bond issuance. During the other parts of this presentation, you will receive more detailed information concerning the process that is expected to be used by NDOT if it makes a written recommendation to the commission seeking commission approval through a resolution for any future bond issue. Next slide. The bonds, sorry about that. The legislature specified, as we've said several times, up to $450 million in the principal amount of the bond issuance, and the issuance should require no more than $35 million in annual debt service. The bonds cannot be issued later than June 30 of 2029, and the bonds must be paid off by June 30th of 2042. As you know, the legislature also extended the sunset of the Build Nebraska Act and its additional revenue stream to 2042. The proceeds of the bonds will be placed in the State Highway Capital Improvement Fund, and the Highway Bond Act includes other provisions concerning the details of the bonding transaction, as you would expect to see in legislation authorizing an issuance of bonds.
Continuing with our just covering and some background and giving you an introduction to the process, there are a number of players in a bond issuance. I want to give you some background on those participants. The issuer, in this case, according to statute, the Highway Commission on behalf of the state of Nebraska and the NDOT. Bond counsel is a law firm engaged by the Highway Commission and the NDOT to assist in structuring the transaction and will provide its opinion that the bonds have been validly issued and are tax exempt. A municipal advisor is an entity engaged by the issuer to provide advisory services with respect to the structure, timing, terms, etc. of the bonds and their issuance. The underwriting firm are the purchasers of the bonds via a sale or auction. The investors are the buyers of the bonds, including mutual funds, property casualty insurers, banks, money managers, and individuals. The trustee or paying agent is a financial institution with trust powers designated by the issuer that acts in a fiduciary capacity for the benefit of the bondholders in enforcing the indenture. The trustee would also act as paying agent and registrar for the bonds. A rating agency is an entity that assesses the creditworthiness of the issuer's bonds with a credit rating assigned affecting the interest rate the issuer pays. And finally, there are a number of other additional parties that includes Disclosure Council, Issuers Council, Underwriters Council, co-managing underwriters, electronic auction bidding agent, disclosure agent, and arbitrage rebate specialist. I'm very pleased to have our advisors with us here today. I'd like to introduce them to you. Scott Keene, third row here, is Managing Director in the Public Finance Investment Banking Group at Piper Sandler and Company. Scott joined Piper Sandler in 2019 after 30 years of public finance banking experience with other firms in Lincoln. He focuses his public finance effort on Nebraska municipalities, school districts, counties, the University of Nebraska, other colleges. Scott has led financings for many government agencies. Greg Dietrich is partner in the Omaha office of Kutak Rock. And has focused practice for more than 25 years solely on public finance matters, during which time he has served as bond counsel and underwriters counsel in connection with hundreds of public finance transactions. For more than a decade, Greg has had the primary responsibility for Kutak Rock's work with two Midwestern states, including the state of Nebraska. For instance, Greg has acted as bond counsel in the state of Nebraska's Equipment Master Lease Certificates of Participation Financing Program. Finally, Steve Likes, who wasn't able to join us today, is partner in the Omaha office of Kutak Rock and is chair of Kutak Rock's Omaha's public finance office and has more than 25 years of experience. He has served as bond counsel and underwriters counsel in hundreds of general obligation and revenue financings for states, cities, counties, school districts, and other political subdivisions. In particular, he acted as bond counsel in connection with the Lincoln South Beltway project, and he regularly acts as bond counsel to Nebraska cities and counties in connection with their financing through the Nebraska Highway Allocation Fund. So our bond counsel at Kutak Rock would prepare several documents for the commission's review. They include the indenture or resolution. The indenture is a contract executed by the Highway Commission as the issuer of bonds and the bond trustee, which would be identified at a later date. The indenture describes the structure and terms of the bonds and the contractual rights and obligations of the issuer and the trustee. The official statement, or OS, is a document prepared on behalf of the issuer containing information about the proposed bond issue, the project to be financed, and the issuer, in this case, the Highway Commission and NDOT. The official statement will include information regarding the purpose of the financing and how it will be repaid, and material financial information with regard to the Highway Commission and NDOT. The preliminary version of the OS would be published with the notice of sale. The notice of sale, or simply the notice, is a document that is published for review by the prospective bidders and describes the terms that the issuer establishes for the competitive sale of the bonds. The notice typically contains many details, such as the date, time, and place of the sale, the dollar amount of the bonds being offered, a general description of the bonds, a proposed maturity schedule, and many others. Okay, next we want to share with you a preliminary timeline of events that could be followed. So number one is today. We're presenting you this introduction to highway project financing. Number two, during the months of September and October, NDOT, the working group at NDOT drafts the bond resolution and indenture, and also the preliminary official statement, also known as the POS for short. On October 24th, our working group will have another presentation for you, including a review of an initial draft of the bond resolution indenture prepared by Kutak Rock and the working group. Number four, in the month of November, bond counsel and the working group will revise and finalize the draft POS as well as the notice of sale. In late November, the NDOT working group finalizes and delivers the draft bond resolution and indenture, the POS, and the additional NDOT financial information to the bond rating agency. Number six, on December 6th, the working group will have another presentation for you, and it'll be the final presentation and recommendation as provided in the Nebraska Highway Bond Act that Jeff described. Number seven, late December, NDOT would receive the bond rating. In early January, our municipal advisor, Scott Keene, would post final versions of the POS and the NOS to the bond auction website. And in mid to late January, the competitive sale of the bonds would take place. In early February, number 10 on this timeline, bond settlement and delivery of proceeds to NDOT would occur. And finally, number 11, following all of that, NDOT would begin to use the proceeds and make twice annual debt service payments. We felt it important to include a reminder that NDOT's projected timeline to construct the yet to be completed expressway projects assumes development is not constrained by the following: resource agency constrained staffing, contractor capacity, material shortages, extreme weather conditions, future inflation, and significant cost escalation due to influx of funding. These are the same constraints we communicated in NDOT's 2023 BNA TIA report. And so in conclusion, project financing provides a fiscally responsible option to selectively expedite critical highway projects. The Nebraska legislature, through the Nebraska Highway Bond Act, has established clear expectations, guidelines, and limits, and key participants and processes will ensure efficiency in preparation and issuance. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the commission?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just start with a quick one. Did the legislature or whoever gave this right for us to do this, allowing us any flexibility in timing of if we go to a POS, then do we have to have it on February 2nd? Or do we have the chance for our bond counsel and to be able to pick the right timing of
And
this?
we would certainly work with our advisors on the timing. One thing that Scott has already advised us about is the best times in the market for issuing bonds. And what Scott has advised that late January, early February are ideal time for issuing bonds.
Okay. Well, 1 week might be, 50 basis points as compared to the next. So
Yeah, there is not anything in statute that guides the process. We have the ability to guide it based on the benefit to the taxpayer.
Correct.
I had a couple of questions just about the Highway Commission's responsibility. You went through it, Jeff. I got we have to approve a resolution that's prepared by the department, but you listed several other responsibilities. I couldn't write it fast. Go through that and just what we have to do as the Highway Commission
Sure.
legally to make this happen.
If you look at the Nebraska Highway Bond Act, there are probably 15 different references to the Highway Commission action. And again, we're just trying to do the introduction today. I can go through whatever detail you want. To me, the key ones we've already kind of talked about. Step one, written recommendation from the department. And the department is in the process of working with our municipal advisor and our bond counsel. And by the way, Greg Dietrich is here. Greg, raise your hand, from Kutak Rock. But to work with bond counsel to develop the recommendations to the commission. So I think ultimately you will not have a lot of duties other than to review information that's provided by the department. So we will begin the process of identifying, and Lynn will be at the center of that, the key terms. Scott will be assisting us in making sure it's for a bond issuance that will be something that the public will want to purchase. And then we will come back to you. So the timeline is introduction today. October, you will be able to look at some of the documents and there will be more detail about interest rates and about some of the assumptions that are made, even though some of those blanks will be XXX because we don't know what the final numbers will be. And then finally, in December, we will ask for your formal approval and you will have all the materials provided to you to allow you to make those decisions. So again, today's just kind of introduction. If you want me to, I could go through the statute, but there are probably 15 different places. You have lots of authority, general, and you'll have to look at specific items and make specific decisions. But I think it will follow. You don't have to worry about that part of it. We will be relying heavily on our advisors, and we'll have detailed information for you as we go along. I know I didn't really answer your question, but.
So building off of Commissioner McGinnis's question into Commissioner Wolford's question, can you clarify? My understanding is that we'll put documents in front of the commission. They'll have the ability to sign off that we will move into an issuance. But as Commissioner McGinnis said, things can change within the market within a matter of weeks. So some of those specific numbers may not be in the actual approval because we want to be able to have the flexibility to adjust to the market within the timeline that we're having. So it'll be open conversations. So that those specifics may not be in the voting materials, but they can be communicated so that there's an expectation of your approval that you're giving to us on interest rates and numbers and whatnot, right?
Correct. And our advisors will always be available to assist with understanding the details because they're is a lot of complexity to the details, but yet, as we pointed out, bond issuances happen. City of Lincoln goes through bond issuances regularly. So I don't think there's any concern that you'll have all the information you need to make decisions.
Did I just hear that, and I get what you're saying, the interest rates will change and the actual issuance may vary somewhat in the estimates, but you're gonna put in the resolution just the authority to issue bonds without the amounts, or we're gonna be asked to give a blanket approval without knowing what you're gonna do?
That's not what I said. I
Okay,
said that the information will be communicated to you, but in order to make sure that the flexibility is there and that we don't step on ourselves, the actual resolution may be more streamlined than in specific documents. You're not going to be signing a legal document that would bind you to something. Rather, we're going to prepare that information so that you understand and the expectation management is there as we move through the process. The last thing we want to do is to put a binding document that would come out of the commission and would potentially prohibit our opportunity.
Yeah, in essence, I think that we'll be asking the commission for approval. Some of the details may be, here's our expectation of the range of certain items. And so we may be asking for approval that says if it's within this range, you hereby give approval. So again, like you say, it's not going to be fill in the blank after you've given your approval, but there will be a process. It's just that we have to retain the flexibility, to deal with how the market is moving and other. Lynn?
That's right. Well, Scott has shared with me, and we don't expect this, but there is a lot of flexibility to, once the commission has given its approval, the market can change. And so we want to make sure we have the most favorable conditions as possible. And so Commissioner McGinnis's question is a very good one. We want to make sure we're doing it at the right time.
You also said, and one thing I did write down, that the legislature said 75% has to be for expressways or high priority corridors. So I'm assuming that in the resolution, you're going to identify those projects that you're going to target, right? So that we meet that legislative requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the members of the legislature and the governor have indicated that Highway 275 is a priority candidate. As we've mentioned, completion of expressway corridors that are already underway is a priority, and so that will be there. But the general authority provided by the legislature is, as you mentioned, the projects that fall under the BNA umbrella.
Thank you.
As a practical matter, having been through some of these before, you indicate that it's going to be presented to us in October. Can you give us a general idea as to when those documents will be provided to the commissioners so that we have a chance to review them rather than coming to the meeting and being asked, do you have any questions, without having a chance to study or review the documents?
Sure. I may need to rely on our advisors a little bit on the timing there, but please keep in mind that the October is not, we are presenting you drafts at the October meeting. The action would take place in December.
I understand that, but I'm sure I'm asking this for other commissioners as well. We're going to want an opportunity to review the drafts before the October meeting so that we can have at least reviewed them and have questions based on the review of the document.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
And Scott is shaking his head yes. He's been through that decision-making process with many bodies like yours, and we understand you need information in advance. And
I'm saying yes on behalf of Greg Dietrich.
Yes, all the pressure's on Greg.
Understand his body language.
You want to get as much time as possible to make sure the drafts are meaningful so that the next time we look at them, they haven't changed dramatically. But I think, typically initially we're going to have 7 to 10 days. But that's the time. I'm sure we haven't talked about it, but that's for sure.
We're developing a schedule internally that Scott's taking the lead on, that will have milestone dates deadlines for us internally to have documents for review, but that will include making sure we give you plenty of time as well.
Thank you.
I would just like to applaud the governor and NDOT for finally looking at using bonding. I mean, I've been an advocate for 20+ years that I've been on the Highway Commission because I was a city council member and a county commissioner, and we bonded all the time, and school districts do. And, you know, we've seen, you know, in years past where we had extremely high inflation rate and really low interest rates, and it would have been a super time to bond. And we really missed it, I think. And it's kind of sad that we could have saved millions of dollars and had projects done much, much faster. But like I say, I applaud where we're moving. I think it's a great step, but we need to do it selectively. Kansas went about it the wrong way. They went out and, you know, bought the farm and are paying for it now. And so I hope that's the way we proceed, is very selectively. So it makes a lot of sense. So thank you.
And I would echo Commissioner Leafgreen's. Over 20 years ago, Kathy Campbell and I co-chaired a committee put together by Governor Johans. And in our recommendations back to the legislature, we included bonding. And I agree with Doug's comments because I think it needs to be used very selectively. And, you know, when interest rates were bottoming out there 10 or 15 years ago, I think there was a missed opportunity, but I also have confidence in the people that we're working with here, that they will be selective and make good recommendations to the commission on when and how much to do.
Yeah.
I think it's important to address the Kansas example because it's so close to us and it's referenced quite regularly. It is one reason that we continue to talk about our funding and be open and honest with some of the shortfalls we see within our revenue. Because my concern and where Kansas's position was, is if you look at what the situation was, it was not the DOT that made the decisions that got Kansas's transportation system into the problem that it was. It was the legislature and the governor's office that chose to redirect funding that was meant to move the program forward and move it into the general fund. And that meant that they were really doing debt service and preservation, and that was it.
Well, I know it was politically motivated.
Yes.
They were picking all of these projects and then bonded all of that, but it wasn't being selective.
You're exactly right. And so we have definitely learned from those states around us. And one of the things that builds off of the last two comments is there is a tool out there that is being used by Oklahoma and others that is showing very good promise. And so we're looking at what, and Lynn referenced it, what the application of TIFIA would look like, which would mean that we could borrow at potentially half the treasury rate. And so there are ways that you can control for some of the interest rates that we're seeing, but it would take the state moving and potentially having to look at the constitutionality of TIFIA. And so we are looking at how do we influence and truly move into a finance state as opposed to just a state who issues bonds or has bond issuances every couple of years. We really want to be able to use those tools because you're exactly right. We've got to do it very thoughtfully, and it has to be a part of a program to make sure that it's being done in a fiscally conservative way. So very much appreciate your comments.
Yeah, that's great.
Any other comments from the commission? Look forward to seeing you.
Good job.
I gotta go to Grand Island.
Exciting. Huh?
We gotta go to Grand Island.
Yeah, we do.
At this time, we have allowed time for public input on the bonding situation. And so based on what you've heard this morning or what may have come to mind, it's the same rules. If you have something to say about it, please come forward to the podium, state your name, spell your name, and let us know if you represent a particular organization. but this would be your time to comment to the commission on this bonding situation. Okay, I guess everybody's questions were answered or whatever, but as was stated, we'll be back on this issue at our next Highway Commission meeting to take another step in that direction. The next item on here is remarks from the chair. Again, I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate the comments. We're always encouraged when we have people step up and let us know what's on their mind. You know, again, it's one of those deals that if we don't know about it, there's not much we can do. So we really appreciate the attendance today, the comments that were made, and we appreciate you taking your time to come in and meet with us. Are there any written records or anything that came in over the internet during the presentation? Okay, so our public calendar.
The next scheduled meeting is October 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in Grand Island City Council Chambers at 101 East First Street, Grand Island, Nebraska.
Thank you. So with that, if there's no other comments from either the commission or the public, I would adjourn the meeting.